Good day. Welcome to Bond's Wisdom, our Leaders in Conversation webinar. Today's topic, Leading with Ubuntu, Culture, Courage, and Psychological Safety. I'm very honored to introduce you to Crispin Swart, our host, and Millicent Lindiwe Ndaba, our speaker. Millicent is the author of this book and will be using this as part of her discussion. Just to introduce her a bit, Millicent has a master's degree specializing in leadership from Germany, postgraduate diploma in management practices from the University of Cape Town, Bachelor of Accounting Science from the Free State. She's a certified director, a certified ethics officer. She has more than 30 years leadership experience. She's a certified internal auditor. She has been in leadership in a variety of different areas in governance, risk and compliance, gained from various roles from PwC, Free State Department of Education, City of Cape Town Municipality, the International Convention Center, the Stadium, the Homestead Project for Vulnerable Children, Blessed Hands, and so we are very honored to have Millicent share some of her insights from her book. And I'll now hand over to Crispin and Millicent to have a conversation. How we'll run the session is Millicent and Crispin will have a conversation for about 40 odd minutes. And then thereafter, we'll open up. And you are all welcome to unmute. And then we'll have a conversation with whoever would like to participate actively. In the interim, please pop us in the chat box any of your comments, suggestions, any questions you might have. And let's all just gain as much wisdom as we can from the session. Over to you, Crispin and Millicent.
People would normally be in the office at different times. And then these are the times where you will actually be in the same venue, sometimes for formal interaction, but also sometimes for informal interaction. Because, you know, as human beings, we need to relate with one another. Even when you work together, you need to relate. You cannot just talk about bottom line. So you formalize that structure, because what I've actually seen that if you don't formalize those structures in terms of saying, this is how we are going to interact, this is when and how we would actually be there, this is what we would be doing in terms of the formal work, this is when we would be engaging in informal work times together, time passes. You know, 6 months can pass without you even interacting with the person seeing.
Yes,
because it's so easy to be in your own personal space. And I found that actually worked. And also having touch-up sessions, that even when it comes to remote, that you meet with people for the purposes of discussing work, but you also meet with people to hear how they are. And you interact with them and say that, guys, it is okay for us to just talk about us and nothing about work. And you create that environment that people would also be comfortable, that they can engage you and tell you when something happens. Because sometimes people can go through life. You know, the advantage of being in a building every day together is that you can see a person that they are fine and they're not fine. But when you're not with a person, you won't easily be able to see. But when you have created that culture that people know that they can be relaxed to just engage with you for no reason, then they can be able to tell you that you are okay. Like, I find that we've created that environment in such a way that even my team, when I'm not okay, like I hurt my ankle yesterday, and today, you know, I think my mood was a bit down. And when I interacted with one of my managers, the first thing that she was saying, "What's wrong with you?" You understand? So it actually works. So if you established it in such a good way that even though you actually interact virtually, by just interacting, people will know if you are okay and if you are not okay. But you need to work on it first.
How do you set those boundaries in terms of what's acceptable and what not? How would you know that somebody's falling off the radar?
You know, I set the boundaries. First, the boundaries, because sometimes it can also get out of hand.
That's why I'm asking. Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that I would normally say to my team is that we are still here for a particular purpose. Yes, we are interacting so that we are comfortable with one another. However, we shouldn't forget who we are and why we are here. And there are parameters in which we would need to operate. So you will know when something is not respectful. Just because we are comfortable with one another, it doesn't mean that you can just speak anyhow, for
Mm,
instance.
mm,
So you still need to be conscious that we're creating this space so that there's easy access, but not disrespect among each other and
mm.
even among colleagues. Because I always say to my people that, we are actually paid to make sure that we get well with one another. We respect one another. You don't have a choice. You don't choose who your fellow
Yeah,
colleague is, because somebody goes through a whole interview process and then you are assigned there. But part of what you are paid for, you are not doing the person a favor by respecting them. You are not doing somebody a favor by having a cordial professional relationship. It's part of what you are paid for.
it's true. That's true.
So you earn your salary by delivering the work that you need to do, but you cannot do it alone. That's why you are not alone. You need your fellow colleagues to do it. But part of that teamwork is to establish that cordial and professional relationship. That's the full package.
I've never thought of it that way. No, I'm serious. I've never thought of it that way. I've always just thought I'm paid to do my job and deliver and get certain results and outcome and impact. And
You
so you're
also
bringing
pay
it.
to get along with your colleagues.
Yeah, but then what I'm saying, I never thought about it that way. So thank you for that. I want to circle back to the title of your book, and that is the reciprocal nature of leadership and culture.
Mm.
And where I'm going with the question is in this particular direction. Is it possible to have a culture that we all can identify with? What I mean is, some of us are in large organizations,
Yes,
some of us are in smaller organizations,
yes,
some of us, if you think about your own organization of
yes,
30 odd thousand people, it's a
yes,
massive, massive
yes,
organization.
yes.
Is it possible, the work I'm doing with the PwC and with others, is
Mm.
it possible to have a single culture for
Yes.
an organization? That's the first question.
Mm.
And linked to that is, help me just practically understand this reciprocal nature between culture and leadership. And I know you unpack that in your book, and in terms of
Yes.
leadership influences culture and culture influences leadership. But
Mm.
and where I'm also going in a clunky way, Lindy, where I've been struggling in my own mind to think about, can we talk about a South African culture?
Yes.
Given everything we're seeing in our country and the national dialogue and all the different
Mm.
perspectives about
Mm.
what seems to be working and not working,
Mm.
because in culture, I would imagine there's identity.
Yes.
And so, yeah, if you could just spend some time on that. Is it possible to have a single culture for an organization as large as yours or as small as ours? And then how does culture and leadership work together to enable that?
Um, yes. If you go towards the end of my book, I address that.
Hmm.
And I even indicate that maybe that's where we need to go as a country. Because if you look at the organization, né, and if you look at culture, culture is really your behavior, it's
Yeah.
the norms, it's the standards, it's your values. Né? And you can just imagine, and most organizations do have values.
Yes.
the problem sometimes with those values that they don't become a culture of the organization is that they are not enacted. So you need to, because it's not automatic, it's not what you say. Culture is not what you say, it's what you do. It's how you show up. You can say the most beautiful things. That is not your culture. Your culture is what you do when you are alone and when you actually show up with people. And sometimes people will think that, you know what, when I'm in public, this is how I portray myself. And then privately, this is how. They don't realize that culture is unconscious also. You know, the stuff that you work on continuously and that the way that you show up, you portray that even in a public way without you realizing it. People experience it, even though you say that, no, that's not who I am, this is who I am. And then people will be like, oh, yes. And they would be like, okay, in your face, they would be like, okay, we know. But behind your back, they would be like saying, oh, we know that person. He's like that. So you are not, it's not hidden. So the secret really is to turn your values, because every organization has a set of values. If we look at the city, we have our values. But the secret is to work towards enacting those values, that they become our culture. Because if we talk about caring, a city that is caring, are people experiencing that caring nature? When people are experiencing that caring nature, that is our common culture. So it's turning your values into your daily activities. Then you have a universal culture. That wouldn't really contradict with your individual culture. That doesn't mean now people are going to be robots. No, you will still have your individual behaviors, cultures, and norms in your individual spaces, but you will be subscribing to this bigger space. And if we look at our country, that's why I was actually saying is that Ubuntu are principles that are known and they are advocated. It's something that is part of our DNA. We all talk about it. But what goes wrong in our culture when we see that decisions are made that are not benefiting the majority of the people of our country? Where is Ubuntu when you come to? So Ubuntu needs to be so much part of us that you actually say that I am making the right decisions for the people of this country. And then if there are things, we say these are the programs for the youth, that truly they are benefiting the youth, and somebody doesn't need to know someone who is important to be able to access that, then it is for the youth in terms of broad, and the youth experience that. And if we talk about leadership, that if we look at the crime, what goes wrong? What pushes people to a point where that they actually feel that for them to survive, they need to harm somebody else? You know, there are those dynamics that if we get to the bottom of it and we unpack it, and we would need to unpack those for us to say that, Ubuntu is our culture, because then everybody will be able to own it. Everybody will be able to feel it. And everybody will be able to say that I'm South African. Because I'm South African, this is how I show up. This is how I experience my fellow South Africans show up. This is how I experience my leaders showing up. And this is how I show up. Then when we get to that stage, then we can actually say that is our national culture. And not only us, someone who experiences us. Because that's the thing about culture. You don't say it. A person experiences it. Yeah. Somebody else will tell you that you are like this, because that's your culture.
Okay, so I'm just digesting that. Are you able to share a real practical example? And let's work with the value of caring, the one that you mentioned, because it happens to be a value that many organizations have. We're a caring organization, or caring is a value in our organization. How do you practically demonstrate as a leader that particular value? Because I'm hearing you saying it's not something I say, it's something I do. It's who I am, it's how I show up.
Yes.
And caring could be seen as soft and fuzzy and fluffy in many cases. I'm curious to hear how you do that practically. How do you as a leader role model and demonstrate a value as an example? And it could be any value, but just how do you do that practically?
If we look at caring as a value, and then I look at, for instance, myself, if I look at the scenario, and I can actually make examples in different ways, personal and at work, and within the organization. So if I can maybe just start off by looking at from an organizational perspective. And here you actually, when I engage with the people within the city of Cape Town, and here's somebody, you see that maybe they're not doing well. Practical example. Someone is not doing well, and normally this is a person who would normally do their best. And then part of caring, instead of actually saying that thou shalt, and this is how I expect, then I actually make time to say, can I have a chat with you?
Okay.
And if you realize that maybe it might even be deeper sensitive, can we maybe go and have coffee? And actually engage. Sometimes you don't even need to say to a person what's wrong. Immediately you pause, and then you are in a different frame, and we say, I'm here as a person, not as your manager. I find that it will happen automatically. A person will just, then you realize there's more, just like you would sense, then the person would open up and say, this is what's happening, this is what. And the thing is, here caring is coming in, is that maybe sometimes you didn't realize the extent of the issue. Let's say maybe you had like 5 minutes that you set aside for that conversation. And then a person breaks in your presence.
Sure.
What is important is that at that time, sometimes you'll just need to shift other things and just allow the space to take. And then I would maybe engage with my PA to say, can you reschedule some of my meetings and whatever? I cannot get out of this conversation. And you just allow it to go wherever it needs to go. And you don't leave a person at that break until you conclude that matter and engage in a point where, because when somebody opens up, you can't say, I don't have more time. You just need to allow that space until it gets to a natural end on its own. That is demonstrating caring, because now you're not just running after a product, the well-being of an individual is important, and you deal with that at that particular time.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you in my understanding saying, it's this ability to be fully present in an environment and in a place and in a conversation with somebody who actually just needs it at that particular point.
Just being there and allow the conversation
present,
to go.
Which again talks to being a authentic and engaged and involved leader. Is really, it's hard to do this by remote. I can't lead remotely.
It is.
I mean, by remote control.
Yes.
I have to do it in a way that I am present, even if it's virtual and
Yes.
Lindy, were there two other words that you weave throughout your book, and I'd like your thoughts on them, please. The first is psychological safety.
Mm.
There's a lot of conversation out there around
Yes.
psychological safety. Everybody seems to be
Mm.
talking about it. Everybody's having conversation about it. What does psychological safety mean for you? And I'm happy for you to reference your particular context in the organization that you're a part of. What does it mean for you, and how do you make psychological safety real for your team?
Yes. Psychological safety is where someone would be able to give you feedback without consequence. You would need, because the thing is about culture, we all have a blind spot. I always use the example of a perfume.
Yes.
Whenever I talk about a culture, and especially when I get to the psychological safety part, so that you see that somebody else can smell that perfume, your perfume, after some time, but you can't.
Sure.
But then you think that this is how you actually are, but other people actually see you differently. How do you grow? How do you enable those people? How would people be able to give you that feedback, to say that this is how you smell?
Sure.
You need to create, that's where you need to create that psychological safety in their space. They need to know that I would be able to respectfully give this feedback without having, like other people normally say, creating career suicide. There will be no consequences because people would be understanding that it's coming from a good space. That's why 360. And now I want to come back to the course that you actually presented to us, the leadership course. If you can remember, when you were doing it with the city, that we actually did that, and the role of the importance of the 360 reviews that you were advocating there.
Yes.
You can never have an effective feedback from your team if they don't know that you are not going to hold their feedback. If, for instance, you have an area of improvement, you are not going to hold that against them.
Yes.
They will always, if they know that you will hold what they say against them, they will always tell you what you want to hear. But here's the trick, is that you never grow.
True.
You remain this person that you are.
True.
And you remain in this bubble thinking that you are so great, while other people would actually say behind your back, she's like this, like that, like that, like that. In your face, you are like this. And then you get to a point in your life where you reach a ceiling. Because you can only go so far when you don't work on yourself.
Yeah.
So when you allow yourself to be reflective on the areas of improvements, and you allow others to have that psychological safety where they can actually give you feedback, it is actually for your own benefit. It's not for their benefit. It's for your own benefit to create that space, because it enables you to work on those blind spots that you might not be aware of.
Lindy, were you're triggering a thought. My dad was 93 when he passed on, and he loved Old Spice. Was his aftershave. And as you were talking about the perfume, I remember that. And as a young man growing up, that was my safe space. When I smelled Old Spice, I knew Dad was around and I was safe. It's just amazing just how that memory surfaces now again. The second word that I was alluding to, and that you do pull through your book, is the word courage.
Yes.
Now, you are in an environment that physically, mentally, emotionally, well-being is not always safe.
Yes.
We know that there are many public officers that whose lives are at risk and who are operating in unsafe environments.
Yes.
And we read about that every day in the newspaper.
Yes.
And in particularly your line of work, there is risk in the work
Yes.
that you do.
Mm.
Talk with us about courage.
Mm.
How do you, as a leader, as a female, as a woman leader, in adversity, in high risk environments, where what you do and how you do it and what you put out there as part of your work exposes, could put you at risk. Courage. Lindiwe, how do you hold on to courage? How do you work with it? And what does it take to be courageous in the work that you are doing, in the role that you are playing?
Okay, that is something that's very relevant, especially, in the role that I am within the organization. And in throughout my life, coming from a governance, risk, and compliance environment, that you wouldn't be able to operate in that space effectively if you do not have courage. Because you will have those difficult conversations that nobody wants to hear.
Yes.
And then before I go into how I would actually do it, I just want to say that, we are all, as human beings, we have our body, we have our soul, and we have our spirit. We are three in one.
Yeah.
And you need to, if you need to be effective, you need to deal and work on all. For you to have wholeness as a person, you need to develop and enhance and mature all. And there are times where, when things are difficult, where you would need to take that source from the spiritual depth. Being grounded in my spiritual belief does help a lot, because there are times where you would need to say that, you know what, you in this particular situation, you need to believe that there is a higher power that will help, that will see you through, because the space will be so unsafe, where you need to make a decision. Do I sell my soul, or do I move away from my values, or do I stick to the values and do what I need to do? And then I would always choose, to say that I would stick to my values. However, when I look at everything humanly possible, that there's nothing Lindwe can do to save herself out of the situation, that's where I would tap in to my spiritual belief, and I would depend on God to say, Lord, help me, go with me and see me through in this particular situation, and let me have the courage for me to deal with this. And not only that, let me enjoy what I'm doing as if there is no adversity. Let me have fun. Let me go out there in the rain, even if it's a storm. And then in my mind, let me see this beautiful rain where I can just enjoy the waters and function and go with it. And there are times where I would do that and tap into the deep depth of my courage to say that, you know what, you need to do. Because I always feel that, what is the legacy that Lindwe wants to leave? For me, it's about I don't want to betray my future. Tomorrow, when I look back and then I am judged by the next generation because I sold them out, I made decisions, that would actually not advance them. So I would always say that if I die, I die. As long as I know that this is the right thing that I need to do, and this is a good cause and the right purpose, and let me be true to what I believe in and do the right thing, not just for me, for myself and for the generation yet unborn, because there is a legacy that I would like to leave. There is a particular way that I would love to be remembered. If I look at the city, I would want to have footprints that I leave that would not be erased by time. So that's where I would actually get the courage. And you find that, things actually work out. Sometimes you'll find maybe, it was so rough and you thought that the boat is actually rocking, and somehow things fall into place. And I realized that the truth has a way of defending the truthful if you remain true to that. And you have the courage to do what is right, but you are not stubborn. You don't have you are not defensive, because nobody's perfect. If you are corrected by other people, then you accept correction. So you are not naive in terms of saying, or arrogant in terms of saying it's my way or highway. No, it's a situation that what is it that is right? What is it that we are standing for? What are the values of this institution that we are working for? What are we working towards? And this is what we are working towards. So what I'm doing, is it moving in that direction? If yes, carrying me through, Lord, no matter what. And I actually find sometimes, even later, when you are at loggerheads, sometimes even the people that you would be at loggerheads with end up respecting you so much, and they would come back to say that, but we know if we want something to be done right, we want you to do it. And if there's anything that when you actually do it and you say this is the right thing, you would actually stand for that. And if there's something wrong, you would be okay to say that, you know what, I was wrong, and I'm backing off. Let's take a different direction. So you must be able to be open to correction, but when you know that this is the right way, you decide that, I will pay the price for that, but get the inner strength to do it in a way where you enjoy it, because you don't even know who is looking. Sometimes people are looking, and
Yes.
they looking up to you, and that joy is infectious.
Sure.
Somebody will do the right thing because they've seen you do the
Do
right
the
thing.
right thing.
And sometimes we don't like tough situations, but what I've seen is that people would be observing you going through a turmoil, but coming out successful. And then that develops their courage to say that if Lindiwe could go through that, and we've seen it could have gone either way, and then they managed, which means in my own little space where I need to be courageous, I can also do it.
Sure. I don't want to betray my future. I think I heard you say that.
Yes.
And then the truth will always defend the truthful.
Yes.
Sure. Lindiwe, thank you. We've run out of time. It's amazing how fast this has gone. I'd like to open up the floor if there are any questions, any comments, any reflections on what Lindiwe has shared with us. We have about 7 minutes for that, and then we'll start wrapping up. So please, anybody, you're welcome to unmute yourself. If there's any comment, question, feedback to Lindiwe, something that Lindiwe said that just really resonated with you, we'd love to hear your voice, please.
Hi, I am Matsidiso.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I've got a joke about Lindy that came to my mind earlier on when you asked her about boundaries.
Yeah.
He was my classmate at varsity, and we articled together. And I think my first encounter with boundaries, and I need to mention that this is a joke. It was a joke, but it's a very serious principle.
Mm-hmm.
We met a former classmate, a male classmate, after years of not seeing each other. I don't know if you remember Julian, Lindy.
Yes.
And the gentleman gets excited and gives us a hug. I was the first one. He gives me a hug, and then he goes over to Lindy. And Lindy stretches her arm and says, "I don't hug males." Now I stand between two friends. The other one is offended, and the other one is defining a boundary. And I'm just there in the middle. And that, hence I posted in the chat that creating a culture can be very difficult and can potentially create conflict.
Great conflict, yes.
Black culture, I never saw this thing of hugging. I saw it post 94. I don't know where it comes from. And yet we sort of forced ourselves to accommodate it.
Mm.
And Lindy said, stretched her arm, "I'm a married woman, I don't hug males." and if you know her, you'll know that she doesn't have many smiles. So it was just quite something.
Thank you.
But Lindy, I think what is critical for me, which I would like to see us achieve, is how do we reorientate ourselves as a nation, especially in the workplace. For instance, I am an emerging entrepreneur, and for one to get business now, you have to be prepared to give some people that are paid to do work. You have to be prepared to give them incentives, which unfortunately I am unable to do, and so my business has not been moving very fast at all.
Sure.
How do we re-socialize ourselves? How do we create that movement where society has to understand that it is wrong to give bribes?
I think thanks Siri for that question and also your feedback. It's actually nice to hear from you. We've come a long way. It's exactly what I was talking about in terms of we have this national dialogue, and people were asking that what are we going to talk about, because we know that we know the issues that are important, but it's important for us to raise our voices and not be afraid to repeat and repeat and repeat that. But this is not the culture of this country. This is not, we are saying, because you'll find out that the very same people will say, we are a rainbow nation. This is what we do for the emerging entrepreneurs. This is how we actually portray Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a trademark of South Africans. And then we say that that is anti-Ubuntu because you are paid to do your job. You are actually paid to facilitate the funding to the emerging entrepreneurs. So, like I was saying, that you don't need to know somebody important for you to get an opportunity that is created for people in that particular category. Because what we sometimes find, what I find when I observe in our country, is that when a person experiences something, maybe you will talk to your inner circles, and then that's where it ends. We need to have a culture of letting our voices heard in public spaces and not be afraid to say, this is the South Africa that we are portraying. Therefore, if this is the South Africa that we are portraying, we need to stop this and that and that, because the very people who are doing that don't want the public to know that they are doing that. But the more you raise it to say that, but this is happening, then they're going to want to shrink to say it's not happening. So you make it difficult for people. If you look at the fraud triangle, to say that if you have people who are ethical, and those who are not decided, who are actually undecided, and those who are unethical, the idea is that you make the unethical so uncomfortable that they move into this space of maybe being in between. And then you make that in between so uncomfortable that they move into a space of being ethical. Because when everything is in the open and people realize that this is actually happening, then they will be the first ones to defend. And the more that you defend, when the next thing is that a person will want to do it correctly. But the more we voice it out, the more difficult we make it for people to do that. And then in that way, we will be changing the culture. So we have a role also to play, that we should also rock the boat by voicing these things out, that they are happening in the open.
Thanks, Lindy. I just wanted to, I'll get to you. Tsitsi, did you have your hand up?
Thanks very much, Crispin. Yes, I had
Yes.
my hand up. I
Sorry
think
for the long wait.
it's okay. It's okay. I think Lindy has covered most of what I want to say, but just to emphasize and add to the fact that the part that says one of the challenges we have, especially as those so-called blacks, Africans, indigenous, that's what I call them or us. We are apologetic when it comes to talking about elements of Ubuntu. What is this Ubuntu that we're talking about? Because we have been socialized into accepting, deliberately or not, into accepting certain standards of living and livelihood. So the question then becomes, when Auslindi talks about being ethical, question for me is, question for another day, of course, not today. Ethical by whose standards?
Yes.
Who defines that standards of being ethical for me and for everybody else? So I think we need to go back and say, let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
Let's define the terms of engagement for us as a people, not as races or as different nationalities in quotes within our context. Once we can do that, then things will start falling into place. Auslindi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For this, there's so many things we can talk about, but we unfortunately don't have the time. But thank you very much for this.
Thank you very much for that input. And yes, it sounds like there's a second episode needed to continue. Lindewe, I just wanted to feed back to you comments that are in the chat box, which I just want to. The one from is there's a comment that says your voice really matters. So it's an affirmation of your voice and the work you're doing, and it's an encouragement to continue doing that. And your input around courage and how you manifest that really resonated with me, and there's an acceptance and an affirmation of that. There's a comment from Krista saying, thank you, Lindewe, lovely messages. It's touching me and my heart today. So thank you for that. And then there is a comment from Depuyo that says, there's always someone looking at you and watching how you move. I'm one of them. Your courage, integrity, and resilience are very noticeable. I love that they want something done right, that they can rely on you. What a reputation.
Thank you.
So from the audience, there's an affirmation of the value that Lindewe brings and is. There's an affirmation of your character. There's an affirmation of
you.
who you are as a leader.
Mm.
And before I ask you to leave us with a final thought, just really want to thank you so much for being authentic,
Thank
being
you.
courageous. We went off script completely.
Yes.
but it was really, really inspiring. And for those of you who commented and shared, thank you so much to you too. Lindy, we have a minute left. Would you like to just a last final thought that you'd like to leave us with as we wrap up this afternoon, please?
Thank you very much, everyone, for the feedback. I definitely think that it would be great to have the deeper conversations
Yes.
on what we've been talking about today. I think what I would really like to encourage everybody is that, yes, if your voice matters,
Yes.
and let us start that culture of really defining who we are and stop being apologetic of who we actually are, and don't allow other people to define us. That's why I loved unpacking this culture in terms of saying that it's not, we lived in a society where you find that there's other cultures that are dominant, that really suppresses others. I'm saying rise, define who you are, set those standards, like it has actually been already indicated. For us to define, what is ethical, first we need to define who are we, what is our culture, what is our common ground. Like I'm actually saying in the book, to say that as a country, that is our starting point. We need to say and have part of this dialogue to decide that this is our brand. We have brand management, but who are we? What is our brand? Because we talk about Ubuntu. What are the principles of Ubuntu? How are we experiencing that? We've heard from the people here today that that's not what they're experiencing. Why? So let's redefine that and say, but first, we commit to that, and as a collective, we say that this is what we are going to live. But for us to do that, let us raise our voice and use the platforms that are there to influence the direction of where we are going as a nation.
Thank you, and a wonderful way of wrapping up our conversation this afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for being here. We will make it available to all of you. There'll be a YouTube link, and you'll be able to watch the presentation or the conversation again. Lindiwe, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And to everybody else on the call, thank you for joining us, and God bless, and see you at our next Leaders in Conversation episode. Thank you very much.